Hi, welcome back again. Today, the movie we are going to recap is one of the best horror thriller movies, released in 2016. So, hold tight. And let's dive in. The movie starts with a young boy, playing soccer at the seashore. The waves wash up some strange object, and when the boy picks it up, we see it's a helmet with a camera attached to it. He presses the camera open and plays a video. On the video is a man on footage, surfing. There seems to be some sort of accident, and the man is underwater struggling, until a shark attacks. The video is cut off and the boy takes off running with the helmet still in hand. As he runs, we catch a glimpse of half a broken surfboard in the sand. Then, the scene changes, and we see Nancy is watching photos on her phone of a woman on the beach. Her driver notices and asks if it's her in the photos. She states it's her mother, and she's technically never been to the beach they're currently heading to, unless a visit while in her mom's womb counts. She gets flustered by her friend, Anna, who was supposed to join her, texts to cancel. Nancy asks for the name of the beach from her driver but he doesn't respond. They arrive at the beach and Nancy takes in the scenery. There are people in the water surfing. Her driver helps her unload her surfboard and mentions he lives close. She introduces herself as Nancy and the driver introduces himself as Carlos. He rejects her money when she tries to pay him for his services, stating he happened to be heading in the same direction. He inquires how she plans to leave the beach and she says through an Uber, which momentarily confuses him. When she asks again for the name of the beach, the driver simply tells her careful in Spanish and takes his leave. Nancy gears up and proceeds to surf. She gets acquainted with two other surfers. One of them mentions it's hard to paddle against the current and Nancy agrees, stating she almost got caught up in it. They tell her it's a secret beach and ask how she found it. She tells them someone told her about it a long time ago. When she asks what the name of the beach is, one of the surfers responds that telling her would cost her life. They also mention she should watch out for rocks, there's only one tide a day, and there are corals that sting. They want her to join them but she declines, stating she's fine on her own. One of the surfers is wearing a helmet with a camera attached to it. He starts a video and he and his partner begin surfing, with Nancy joining them at some point. After a while, Nancy returns to shore. Nancy does a video call with her sister, showing her she's at mom's beach. Her father steps into the video call and Nancy admits she's in Mexico. Nancy's father isn't happy to hear so, asking if she's planning to drop out of medical school. The call ends on a tense note with Nancy telling her father she doesn't know when she'll be home. After the call, Nancy gears up and returns to the water. The other two surfers head back to shore because it's getting late. Nancy expresses she wants to catch one last wave first. Alone in the water, she seems agitated, keeping an eye out for something. Something does swim out from the water towards her. It's a dolphin. She swims after a pod of dolphins and meets a dead humpback whale surrounded by seagulls. Swimming away from the scene, a wave builds and she tries to surf it. The current knocks her off her board and she hits the bottom of the water but manages to pull back to the surface. Something pulls her back into the water and she starts to bleed while struggling. She manages to pull back to the water's surface and find refuge on the floating humpback whale. She realizes she's been bitten by a shark and uses her leash to try and stop the bleeding. While afloat, she notices the other two surfers are leaving in a jeep. She calls out to them to no avail. There's a rock and a buoy. Nancy takes her chances and swims towards the nearby rock when the shark starts coming towards the humpback whale. She successfully manages to rock. With her medical background, she's able to administer first aid treatment to herself to curb the bleeding from her bite. It's nightfall, and from Nancy's watch, it's a calculated 5 hours to low tide. Nancy, who was previously passed out, wakes and continues to give herself first aid treatment. At this point, she seems to have a little companion, a seagull, perched by her side on the rock. She tries to eat a spider she squashes but ends up throwing up. She spots her surfboard afloat in the water and takes her chances with the freezing water, her blood trailing behind her. Before she can get to the board, she spots the shark and hurriedly swims back to the rock. As the day brightens, Nancy sees a man on shore. He is sprawled on the sand and unmoving, but as Nancy continues to scream out to him, he pulls himself off and notices her. She directs him towards her backpack, letting him know there's a phone in it he should use to call for help. He gets to the backpack, but it seems his intentions are just to steal from her and walk away. He takes the backpack then drops it to drunkenly proceed into the water, towards Nancy's surfboard. Nancy keeps calling out to him about the shark, but he goes on, drunkenly battling with the surfboard. He's eventually pulled in by the shark and when he's seen reaching back out to shore, his bottom half is gone. It's 6 hours to high tide. The Jeep and the two surfers have returned. They begin surfing and Nancy spikes out of her drowsy state to yell that there's a shark and they need to return back to shore. They tell her there is no shark and continue surfing towards her. Just then the shark takes out one of the surfers and eventually the other one, breaking his surfboard in half. It's 3 hours to high tide. The sun is at its peak and Nancy uses one half of the broken board to shield herself. 20 minutes to high tide and we see the helmet with the camera floating amidst. Nancy is still on the rock with the broken surfboard in a tight grip. She sees the shark still circling, but her bird companion is still by her side. Turns out it has a dislocated wing and Nancy helps push it back in place. Explains why the bird has been by her side this long. Nancy has timed the shark. It takes 32 seconds to circle from the whale to the rock, and Nancy has noticed it do this 3 times. She sets her timer and tries to grab the afloat helmet but fails. She barely makes it back to the safety of the rock. She tries again and gets hold of it this time with 11 seconds left. The shark appears and aims at her, but she's able to make it back to the safety of the rock. Her saving grace is the stinging corals that gets in the way of the shark. Nancy plays the video on the camera. In one of the footages, she zooms into the shark's open jaw and notices it's been pierced with some sort of rod still lodged in. She calculates the buoy is a 1-minute swim away and decides she can lapse it with a head start. She adds to the video footage, explaining everything that has happened so far. The island will be submerged in water in about 10 minutes and gangrene is starting to set into her injured leg. She has composed an SOS message with heartfelt words to her dad and sister, then she hauls the helmet with the camera intact back into the sea. She also puts her seagull friend on the broken surfboard and sends it on its way. The water is full with jellyfish and Nancy remembers the coral stinging incident, meaning the shark would be steering clear from the jellyfish. She takes the opportunity as her head start. She swims through the jellyfish, getting stung in the process, and makes her way to the buoy with the shark hot on her trail. It's almost game over when the rungs of the buoy fall apart, sending into the water, as she tries to climb to safety. From a distance, she sees an outline of a ship. She's able to recover a flare gun from a stiff box on the buoy, but while trying to pry the box open, the bullets fall into the water. One hand stretched into the water and the other hand holding onto the buoy, she recovers one bullet and shoots. The trajectory is terrible, however. She dives into the water this time and is able to retrieve the other bullets. She shoots and the trajectory is better, but the ship seems to already be leaving. It's the scene of the young boy playing soccer along the shore. He picks the helmet and looks briefly towards the buoy where Nancy is slumped and tired. He plays the video and Nancy shows on the screen. Her SOS footage is playing and at some point the young boy skips through the video before he takes off running. The shark hits against the buoy, startling Nancy awake. She loads the flare gun and aims at the shark, who seems to be badly injured but relentless, still. She waits for it to circle to the surface, aims and fires. The water flames up, temporarily engulfing the shark. It retaliates by attacking the buoy, sinking its teeth on a rung to try and pull both it and Nancy under. It succeeds and the buoy falls, leaving Nancy somewhat exposed. The shark continues to attack. Nancy notices the anchor keeping the buoy in place is barely holding on. While the shark's jaw is cut on a rod it's trying to free itself from, Nancy swims towards the anchor's chain, which is attached to a surface rock and aids its detachment. Once it's detached, gravity begins to pull it under towards the anchor while Nancy is holding on. At this point the shark has freed itself and is hot on Nancy's trail. But just as she's about to be pulled to the sea's bottom, she maneuvers and the shark gets impaled. The young boy is still running, but this time he seems to be returning with a man. It's Carlos. Carlos spots a corpse in the sand. His attention is then called by the young boy, who happens to be his son, towards the sea. Carlos rushes into the water and is able to retrieve Nancy's floating body. He yells orders at his son and the boy takes off. Nancy is still alive. It's 1 year later. Galveston, Texas. Nancy is at the beach in her surfer suit. The bite from the shark has healed but the scar is evident. She's not alone though. Her sister and father are present, and it seems she didn't drop out of medical school after all because her sister refers to her as Dr. Adams. Just before the sisters head into the water to surf, the father assures Nancy her mom would be proud. Hope you will love our movie recaps. For more recaps like this, please stay tuned.